Hello everyone, my name is Steve and this is my anchor test video number 115. Now today's topic is going to be a continuation of last week's video. That was where I tested genuine Bruce anchors in 4 different sizes. I was kind of conducting a scaling study, kind of wanted to see how holding power increases as you increase weight. Well, just after I uploaded that video, something came up on Craigslist that really I have never seen before, and I had to jump on it. This is a 50 kilogram, 110 pound genuine Bruce anchor. Now it was fairly inexpensive, only $150, but I had to make a few repairs to it. So you'll notice that one of the side flukes is sort of chipped away. Well, I had to add some metal back to it and do a bit of grinding. Obviously we've compromised the galvanizing, but for my test purposes this will be just fine. Now, I've got this anchor set already. It's off the stern. You might be able to see the tripping line float back there. Out the bow of the boat, we have the Dead Man anchor, which is a large fortress anchor. It is an FX85, and the idea with that anchor is that it really shines in this mud, and it will not be basically immobilized. I do not have any cameras underwater. It's just too much trouble for me handling these large anchors and cameras, and the amount of time it takes. I'd blow right through all the battery and memory capacity of the cameras. But in any event, I'll leave things rolling as I winch in on this, and I'll get the camera on the load readout so you can see how much holding power this 50 kilogram genuine Bruce anchor can muster. Okay, I got about 10 feet of slack left on this pull, so we'll start off with that. And keep in mind, I am pulling in on the Dead Man anchor rode, so the scope will not change on the test anchor. It is 8-to-1. I've got 200 feet of rode and we are in 25 feet of water. So it's a straight 8-to-1. No chain here, just Dyneema rode. The anchors have been setting just perfectly here without chain, and at such a long scope, the addition of a small amount of chain really isn't going to change much. If we used all chain, well then maybe perhaps catenary would keep the angle of pull at the anchor near horizontal. But that's not really what I'm testing here. I am testing the relative holding power of different sized anchors, and the best way to do that is with a consistent angle of pull, and we get that with a rope rode. So let's go the first 10 feet and see what happens. 300, 400, 450, 500, 600, 650. Voltage was down to 11.5 volts. I'm going to start the engine for the next pull. All right, here we go. The next 15 feet of line. And here we go. We're still climbing there slowly up over 1,000 pounds. I'm gonna go ahead and let this soak for 10 minutes and we'll come back and see how it does for another 15 feet. Okay, that was 10 minutes of dwell time. The load just slowly creeped down from about 800 to 600, very steady over that 10 minutes. I'll note that the tide is falling at this time. Okay, the 10-minute dwell time is up, and rather than just stomp on the button, I'm gonna just bump it and see if we can't see what the holding power is without the anchor moving. seems to consistently settle back down in the mid 900s. Only pulled in about a foot or so since we started bumping it. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull the rest of this 15-foot segment in. Here's another 15 feet for the 50-kilogram Bruce. That was about half of the distance. So I'm going to let that set a little bit. I'm noticing that after a brief pause, the holding power seems to get better. It only takes a minute or two. Okay, I'll give it another shot. Okay, that completed that 15 feet. Okay, the scope on the dead man anchor is starting to get to be fairly shallow. However, that last winch, I observed the surface of the water and could tell very perfectly that the boat was moving toward the dead man anchor. Very steady, just at the same rate as the winch line. So I think it's conclusive that the dead man anchor is not moving and we are slowly dragging the test anchor. Okay, that was the last of the 15-foot pulling segments that I have in this rode. The next segment is just straight Dyneema all the way to the anchor, so I have no way of grabbing on for another pull. I do have 90 total feet of these 15-foot segments, so we did 6 of them, and it appeared that holding was still increasing. Hard to say what it would do if we kept pulling. You know, at some point we have to ask ourselves, well, what's acceptable? If it takes 90 feet for an anchor to develop its full holding power, well, we may now have moved into other vessels or perhaps a shoreline. So we'll cut it off at that point, 90 total feet, and got up in the high teens. Now, the smaller anchors, we only pulled 3 segments, or 45 feet total. Now, one could say, well, this isn't fair. This anchor got 90 total feet. But it's easily twice as big an anchor, so maybe the whole scaling of everything needs to increase. Maybe we're going to be with a larger boat in a larger anchorage with more space. So I'm not quite sure how I will rate this, but I'm leaning toward using the full 90 feet of pull and those higher numbers. Okay, the anchor is up, but the tripping line must have gotten captured and it's buried and it's pulling the bow down. Kind of hard to believe. You'll just keep pulling and see what happens. Oh. Wow. The tripping line is buried in the mud and it's as if it's an anchor. It has just a small float on the end of it. Maybe it's the float that's buried. Wow. Okay, pulled the bow down, pulled the anchor up a bit. There, I felt it release. That's incredible. Anchored via a tripping line float. Not a bad anchor when it's buried a couple feet. Okay, let's cut right to the big question. Did increasing the size of the Bruce anchor make it produce more holding per unit weight than the smaller anchors? And the answer is no, it did not. We look over in the far right column and we can see that the larger Bruce anchors all make, let's just call it 10 units of holding for each unit of anchor weight. The oddball is the little 5 kilogram Bruce, and it doubled the holding per weight of the other anchors. I did conduct some of my more typical anchor tests on the 50 kilogram Bruce. This is the soft mud Veer. This is where the boat is allowed to move sideways while it is pulling real hard on the anchor. My normal test thrust for the larger anchors in this seabed is 500 pounds, and I did start off and conduct the first 180 degrees of Veer at 500 pounds of thrust. I then increased to 850 pounds and completed another 180 degrees. So I got a full 360, and the anchor did not move much at all. We can see on the GPS track there we got a perfect circle. After completing the circle, I increased thrust incrementally as I normally do in 200 RPM increments, and at 1,000 pounds the anchor was dragging continuously at about 1/10 of a knot, and then at 1,200 pounds of thrust the anchor was dragging at 2.5 knots. I then made my way over to the Cobblestone seabed to see how the anchor deals with those stones. If you think about it, a large enough anchor, say something on a ship, would see these grapefruit-sized
cobble rocks as if they are like grains of sand. And you'd expect this larger, this larger Bruce anchor to, well, be able to deal with these rocks fairly well compared to the smaller anchors. And I will say that the anchor does dig in pretty quickly, and it always remained upright. Unlike the other Bruce anchors I've tested here, they typically are on their side with only one fluke buried, one of those side flukes. But again, this anchor stays upright, does dig in quickly. However, the holding power was medium, let's say, amongst even the 50-pound anchors. What it did was it would repeatedly hold 400 pounds of thrust, and then I would increase thrust from there and it would drag, and then I would slow down the power and let it reset again, and it over and over, it did 400 pounds. Twice, it held 460 pounds. One of them, it was marginal, and the other, it was very solid at 460. No movement whatsoever, and it only started moving when I bumped up power to the next increment. So, again, we'll look at the performance chart at the end of the video and see how that stacks up, but it certainly is going to be bested by several 50-pound range anchors in this Cobblestone seabed. Next is another Veer test in the sandy mud seabed. This one uses a baseline of 850 pounds through 180 degrees of Veer. And after that, I gave it a full power check. So this boat pulls over 1,300 pounds, and it's a real short story here. The anchor doesn't move. It just stays right there through 180 degrees, and I gave it everything I had and could not get that anchor to budge whatsoever. So that's an A+ for this big Bruce in the sandy mud, but it's kind of what we would expect being such a large anchor.
Okay, this is the second 15 feet of the second attempt at trying to get the dead man to set. Okay, there's something. Let the boat get straightened out in line here. Unfortunately, we've burned through 50 feet of the dead man road, so we've already reduced scope substantially. Okay, there's 900 holding. It was 1,600, and then it backed off, and now it's at 1,200. Again, we've got a 50 kilogram Bruce out behind. We're winching in on the dead man, and dead man seems to be set and holding well. Unfortunately, we're running out of string here. We've got another couple 15-foot segments. Okay, give this a 15-foot pull and see what happens. Again, we're sandy mud. The test anchor is at 8-to-1 scope. I'll monitor whether or not the boat is moving. There's 2,000 pounds and holding at 1750, 1650, 16, 15, 1460. 2,200. 2,400. Check the stability of the boat. 1,900 now. Seems stable. Only gone about 5 feet out of this 15-foot segment. Stay out of the way in case things break. 22, 23, 24, 24, 23, 22, 21, 19, 800. Boat is not moving. We're dragging the dead man. Too big of a test anchor. Okay, the dead man anchor started dragging when it got down to about 5-to-1 scope. It was 2,400 pounds of pull, and 5-to-1 scope happens to be the minimum scope that the Fortress company says you should use. And I've tested smaller Fortresses and found that, yeah, 5-to-1 is kind of the magic number. They really like maybe almost 6-to-1. So what I really need is more rode for the dead man anchor. Another 100 feet at Dyneema would be very good. We could keep scope nice and flat even after we've pulled in quite a bit. Then again, I'm testing a 100-pound test anchor here, so maybe we're just beyond the limit of what I can do. Certainly there's some better performing anchors that are gonna approach this same holding number. Okay, the anchor came up completely covered with sandy mud, no weeds, so it was not fouled. In spite of the failure of it as a dead man anchor today, at least we get the following information. An FX85 on all Dyneema Road at 5-to-1 scope holds about 2,400 pounds in this seabed.
So I've gone ahead and placed the 110-pound Bruce on the performance chart with the other smaller anchors. Notice that I have not filled in the average columns for this anchor because it is just so out of place. It's more than double the weight of the next closest anchor. I have filled in some of the columns, however, and we expect to see lots of number 5s, and we do. However, Cobblestone holding is noteworthy. It only gets a 3.5. It shares that rating with the Excel number 5 and the 55-pound Vulcan. However, the 45-pound Mantis M2 and the 50-pound Viking 20, they both are better, and that truly was surprising to me. I just thought this giant anchor would just claw its way through those big stones. Other noteworthy columns, of course, none of the Bruce anchors can self-launch. You have to give them a little kick. Tip to total weight ratio on all Bruces end up being about a 3. But otherwise, everything's pretty much a 5. I didn't get it in the clean sand, and I think we could just assume it's going to do real well there. Also, in the far left column, the reset in sandy mud, that's probably going to be a 5 as well.
Well, it's possible that's the last we'll see of that 50-kilogram Bruce. It was a real bear to handle. I'd like to see the ultimate maximum holding power in the sandy mud, and when I get that longer rode for the dead man anchor, I may reinvigorate myself and give that a test. Kingston Anchors came through. Big thanks to them. They sent me 2 new anchors to test. This is a Quick Set 22 and a Quick Set 50. This one's in their highly polished stainless finish, and this is their commercial finish, which is sort of a matte stainless finish. So looking forward to that. And again, a big thanks to that manufacturer and all the others. I know they're getting free advertising out of it, but what we're getting is a really comprehensive set of anchors for me to test, and just getting some great comparisons across virtually every anchor available. Big thanks to everybody else who is watching, liking, commenting, sharing, donating, all that stuff. If you would like to donate yourself, you can always find links to my Patreon and PayPal accounts in the description below the video. Also, at the tail end of all my videos, I always have a button on screen with a big P, and that'll take you to the Patreon account as well. All right, that's all for now. Anchor safely. We'll see you next time.